Hello again, Twill.tv viewers. I come at you again today with another device review. This specifically is the HTC One from Verizon Wireless. The HTC One, if you're not familiar with it, is a flagship phone, pretty much top-in-class specs, at least for the time being. Packs a 4.7-inch 1080p display, which is 468 ppi, far above and beyond what the human eye can actually detect. It comes running a Qualcomm Snapdragon 600 quad-core 1.7 GHz processor, 2 GB of RAM, 32 or 64 GB of storage. In my case, this one came with 32 GB of storage. Bluetooth 4.0, 802.11a, AC, BG, and N, dual band wireless, which means it works on both 2.4 and 5 GHz wireless bands, which is awesome. A 2300 mAh battery, a front-facing 2.1 megapixel camera, and of course HTC's 4 megapixel ultra pixel camera on the back, which by the way is sporting an f2.0 aperture, which you definitely don't see a whole lot of nowadays. And of course that HTC boom sound trademark blah blah blah, the front-facing speakers, which honestly, yeah, we'll get to that later. But enough of specs, because you can find those and read those just about anywhere else on the net. My experiences with it, well, to be entirely honest, the first experience that I had, the first week and a half or so that I used it, I was not entirely blown away. It was a very decent phone, can't slow it down. The UI on top of it has some strange elements to me. Blink feed is an HTC specific thing where you can load in all of the content that you want to see, all sorts of different tech sites or sci-fi sites or whatever other sorts of topics you want to cover. You can also pull in your Facebook feeds and other social media type stuff, which I thought was going to be obnoxious at first, but more and more as I used it, it just became kind of familiar and kind of integral. It reminded me of some widgets that I'd used on Android in the past, but sort of aggregating multiple things together. Very handy and very convenient once you get used to it. As far as the rest of the UI, the rest of the customized software, the settings menus and all the other type menus they're HTC specific stuff, and if you like that sort of thing, that's awesome. For me, I prefer the Android stock stuff, so if you have the Google edition, you're going to have a much cleaner experience, but I can definitely not really fault them for sins. And like I was saying, as far as the performance, put that Qualcomm processor, 2 gigs of RAM together, and you've got an amazingly powerful duo. So much so that the technology actually starts to step out of the way. You don't really notice just how powerful it is because the apps that you're running, they don't have any problems. As I've said with several other devices at this point, everything that I've thrown at it at this point hasn't really slowed it down. And with 32 gigabytes of storage, I didn't come upon any issues with storage. I know there are some phones that are coming out now with 16 gigs and they go as high as 64, and I think maybe 128 is on the way if it isn't here already. But for a lot of the average lay people type things, 32 is much more than enough. For videos, for games, for pictures, for whatever else you want to put on the device, 32 is an awful lot of storage. Now that said, if you are intending on buying this, keep in mind it does not have an SD card slot, so buy accordingly. If you think that you're going to have enough videos or games or pictures or whatever on your device that you're going to run out of space, you may want to opt for the 64 gig version. Now, as far as the wireless technology inside of it, the Bluetooth 4, I didn't have a whole lot of chance to take advantage of it. Really, I've got a couple of devices that are Bluetooth 4. I've used it with my wireless headphones and with the Bluetooth connectivity in my car, and that worked just fine. Same as my Galaxy Nexus, same as most other devices that I've used nowadays. Didn't really affect the battery life, so that's pretty nice. Unfortunately, the Fitbit that I wear every single day will not sync with it, but I believe that's an issue to do with Fitbit's software not recognizing it, specifically not recognizing the HTC One, because I have tested it with other devices that have Bluetooth 4, specifically the Galaxy S4. It was able to sync with no issues. Couldn't sync with the HTC One, but like I said, that doesn't really have anything to do with HTC as far as I know. And as I was saying before, it does have dual band wireless, so I was able to get it on the 5 GHz wireless here at home, which was kind of nice. But at the same time, the wireless in this device was obnoxious to me. It was perfectly fine using it day to day, not a big deal. But the notifications about it were so obnoxious. And I looked around in the software and I wasn't quickly able to find a way to disable those notifications. There's an option that says notify me if there's wireless available. I unchecked that, and now it notifies me when there's not wireless available, and when there's wireless available. So that's a bit of a bummer. The best way around that, of course, is to turn the wireless off, but then if you want to use the wireless, say, for example, if I want to push stuff from here to Chromecast, I have to turn the wireless back on. And that kind of defeats the purpose. With most other devices that you use, you go home, you get on the wireless immediately, automatically, you go to work, you get on the wireless at work if you've got wireless there. Otherwise, you're on 4G, 3G, whatever it is that you've got, and you don't normally have to worry about something popping up to say, hey, I found a wireless, or hey, I can't find a wireless. Like I said, I looked for a solution to it. I didn't do lots and lots of exhaustive research online. I looked in the software and there was not an option in there to turn off the notification. It's a much, much more minor gripe than I'm making it sound here. Not really that big of a deal, but it just kept popping up today as I drove around town, and it got on my last nerve. Because you can actually swipe the notification away, and then a minute and a half later it will come right back. Now, as far as battery life is concerned, this is going to be really sort of situational, sort of different from person to person. In my case, it was an alright battery life. I mean, 2300 milliamp hours, you're not going to expect it to last a huge amount of time. Definitely better than my Galaxy Nexus, but that's kind of like saying that a race car is better than a minivan. It's different. Yeah. As far as actual usage, there aren't any real specific numbers given, but it says that you can get up to 18 hours of talk time and you can get up to 500 hours of standby time. For me, realistically, if it will last a solid day, I'm perfectly happy. And in this case, I never had an issue with that. I was able to go the entire day, and usually by the end of the day, I would be at 30%, 25% remaining. That's with watching about 1 hour's worth of YouTube videos a day, playing some games here and there, browsing the web here and there, checking email constantly. And of course, while watching YouTube, I would be tied to Bluetooth, either through headphones or through my car. I could be listening to Pandora through Bluetooth in the car, things like that. So yeah, battery life, like I said, it could be better. Like the Droid Max had an amazing 2-day battery for me, but at the same time, if it will last a solid day, for the most part, for most people, you're going to be able to find a plug inside of a 24-hour period. And on most days, I was using this device from about 6:30 in the morning until about midnight or 1 a.m. So that's still pretty admirable. As far as the other very specific features to the HTC One, of course, that 1080p screen, beautiful, never had an issue out of it. It's almost to the point where you don't even want to mention it, but outside, bright sunlight, no problems. That was just a really nice feature of it. Those front-facing boom sound speakers with the Beats by whatever, blah, 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 they sound nice. They're not terribly tinny, but they're also not terribly powerful. The biggest thing there is, even at the very lowest volume setting, they're still quite loud, which means if you're trying to use them in a work environment, they're not gonna be very good for that. But just for every day sitting around the house or out on the go or whatever, yeah, they're very nice for that. You can just sort of prop it up somewhere and have that sound booming out just at you, and most of the people behind you aren't gonna get it because the speakers are facing forward for once. And one thing that I found really unique about this that I didn't even notice until actually very late this week, the power button. The power button placement in this is very odd to me compared to a lot of other devices. Usually HTC tends to put the power button here in the upper right-hand corner of the device. In this case, they put it in the upper left-hand corner. And I noticed it, and I felt it was kind of a strange button, but I didn't think twice about it. Well, I started reading more on the device as time went on. The button's an IR blaster. That's awesome. So there's a TV app that you can use to control your TV, your cable box, satellite, whatever else. In this case, I set it up to control my home TV and my home cable box, and it took probably 2 minutes or less, and I was controlling that. I was able to switch through inputs. So effectively, with this one device, I could turn on my entire media center. I could control what channel is on. I could switch it over to Chromecast and push content from this device to the Chromecast, well, from YouTube or Netflix or whatever, to Chromecast through this. And then when I'm done, go back to the TV app and switch the device back over. Most other devices with IR blasters have really fallen down whenever it comes to that in my experience, so it's really, really nice and refreshing to see something like that work so well. And anyway, to sort of wrap things up, the one thing that I always like to talk about that a lot of people tend to kind of gloss over is the cameras. On this device, it's got a much different camera than most other devices because it has the HTC Ultra Pixel 4 megapixel camera, which is supposed to have bigger pixels. I don't know all the specifics, I'll be entirely honest. In my experience with the camera, it's not the best I've ever seen. It's also not the worst. It's supposed to be amazing in low light, and you can't really expect any cell phone camera to be amazing in low light. The pictures that I've seen out of it, they were all the right color, they all looked very vibrant, and like I said, it doesn't take a huge amount of light for it to be able to capture photos, but when you have too little light, as it is expected, the ISO gets bumped really, really high, you get a lot of noise in the photos. It's a cell phone camera, and they always do pretty terrible when it comes to high ISO. In terms of the video capture, I actually made a video on this channel just the other day talking about the Verizon phone fantasy thing that I'm doing, and that video I think turned out pretty well, albeit a bit shaky. And just to give you a bit of an example of it, this is a sample video from the front-facing camera on the HTC One. Just wanted to see how it looks and how it sounds. From looking in the screen just to see sort of how it looks, because I have these very bright lights on, everything looks very clear. It doesn't look like there's any real grain or anything. Hopefully the audio sounds okay. Let me know what you think down in the comments, of course. And this is a video from the rear-facing camera on the HTC One, the 4 megapixel, ultra pixel, whatever you want to call it. And from looking in the little viewfinder on my camera and seeing picture-in-picture here, it looks good, but it's blurry in my, because I don't have it focused on that. So anyway, this is 1080p footage as well, not optically imagely stabilized, so it's probably going to be quite shaky, but I just wanted to see how it looks and feels. Let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. And after doing a couple of quick tests there, I looked at them on the phone and they actually look very nice. They sound very nice. The audio sounds like it's got a bit of a hiss to it, but again, it's a cell phone microphone, so I guess you can kind of expect that. It is probably entirely possible to hook a 3.5 millimeter microphone of some kind into this, so that may be worth looking into if you wanted to use this for vlogging or anything. But yeah, that footage was definitely usable with the right lighting. Without the right lighting, I don't know if it would be entirely usable. I've got other cameras that I think would do a lot better, but this is a cell phone. This is one device, so it's very hard to complain about it in that aspect. So to round things up and wrap things up and all of that other fun stuff, in my experience, this is one of the best phones I've ever had my hands on. That's not to say that it's the best in the world or the best that there ever will be. The build quality is very, very nice. The battery is decent. The camera is pretty good. And performance, the speed, very, very nice. Highly recommended. Honestly, one of the best ones on the market right now. And something I definitely forgot to mention, I'm just going to throw it in here at the end. This USB port on the bottom, it's a little awkward. It's fine, it's not a big deal, but the stand that I normally charge on, it's a little wobbly on that because it's off-center. For most people, it's not going to be a big deal. For me, it was just an inconvenience at best. You can always just plug it in and lay it down or have a different charge or something like that. But yeah, as I was saying, it's really just a really impressive device. Very well put together. Some minor things to it I'm not a huge fan of, like the placement of the USB port and the fact that there's not an SD card slot, but for most people now, SD card slots are not as important as they used to be. But overall, definitely highly recommend it. If you are in the market for a device, the HTC One should definitely be near the top of your list, somewhere up there with the Galaxy S4, the Droid Max, even though I had some weird issues with the Max. HTC One is near the top of my list as well, and actually up there with the Oppo N1 that just got announced, but that's a topic for another video. That, however, is going to be about all from me for today. If you like this video, like the video down below, that would be great. Share it with your friends if you feel so inclined. Subscribe to receive my content as soon as it becomes available, and I will see you again in the very next video. Bye, guys.